Hey, Kevin, we've had a great morning, haven't we?
Okay, Tom, YouTube is fired up and running.
All right, let's do it. Okay, folks, I want to spend some time talking about entering and exiting and why timing is so important to your operation. I think people can see if you just look at the numbers from May and look at the numbers from June so far, using a very disciplined approach. Doesn't mean you're trading every hour, doesn't mean you're trading every day. It just means you're trading when the opportunity's set up. And one of the clearest examples of doing that, um, one of the clearest examples of doing it, I think, is our weekend side hustle. But let me go on and get the risk out of the way. There's risk involved in trading. We know that. Past performance is not indicative of future results. You can read and memorize that like I have, or you can just think about risk before you trade. Good way to remember what you should be doing. In my opinion, I've got a question for everybody. If you had the confidence, you wasn't fearful, and you could follow and learn and educate yourself to the power of what we do, how many of you believe that y'all could do that? Because I look at what we've done in May and June, and I'm sitting here thinking to myself that this is the best that it's ever been. And I think, you really need to take the time to learn this, takes a little time to get it straight and ask questions. And I know it's a lot harder today versus it used to be because in the old days, it it took a lot to you'd have to travel and meet with somebody and do that. But now online, you do a lot of stuff online. The problem with online, I think, is that you get distracted. Things happen. You got a dog, it runs up, gets your attention, maybe at a key point. But when you're face to face, you can do it. Okay. Uh, anyway, those are the kind of thoughts. Okay. Uh, and sure, we'll be able to go to that, Marianne. If you'll just hold your horses, I'll be glad to cover that. Now, my agenda today is try to teach and educate you. We call this train and trade. And that's the point of us doing this. This is a lot of time, a lot of effort that we're putting in, investing in you, our students, to make sure that you have our process. Because we believe our process, maybe we're a little biased, maybe we're not. Okay? But what we're trying to do. So let's go through the way I start my day. Looking at the seven sisters. What are the seven sisters? The seven sisters are so important because it is taking the broader market and helping me, a trader of many years, have a snapshot of what's moving and what's not. It includes all the stocks out there. It takes it into the futures market. And ES futures is the way I keep track of everything. The reason I use ES futures is because it's 500 of the biggest stocks in the world. Let me tell you, it's very rare that you'll see one of these other elements of the market lead without the seven sisters identifying you have a sector change or anything. So I start there with the seven sisters. Okay. And because of that, it gives me that picture. Okay. That is exactly what I try to do when I look at the seven sisters. We start out with the E-mini, then we have the NASDAQ. The NASDAQ is the top 100 stocks in the tech sector. And following the NASDAQ lets you know, hey, we got something cooking. Okay, that you can look at, and then you can break down what's cooking inside the NASDAQ if you want to. Generally speaking, I have five to eight stocks in the NASDAQ are my go-to stocks, and I'll rotate those in and out depending on what's happening in the market. But it tells me about the NASDAQ stocks. So now I know about the best companies in the world. Now I look at the tech stocks. Then, of course, the traditional way that everybody, that wrongly I think, they follow the Dow Jones. If you ask people, even today, what did the market do, they're going to quote what the Dow did. I hardly ever look at the Dow, but I do. It's one of the seven sisters. The German DAX, and this is out of Germany, but it's probably the most influential of all the European indexes. And I taught it for 18 years, the DAX. I called it Dancing with the DAX. The DAX measures the German economy, but it's really telling us what's happening in Europe if you follow it. Typically, it will react before most US news. So it's a leading indicator of our news by keeping an eye on the DAX. So we have a big news event, like we have a big news event this week, I guess on Wednesday with the Fed. Well, the DAX is going to move and sort of give us a clue what the outcome of what we're doing. They all had to coordinate, but the DAX is very important. Then we look at crude oil. Crude oil is the lifeblood of the economy. Anybody that thinks differently hadn't studied crude oil over years. When crude oil goes really high, you have things like inflation or even recessions because it gets so high. When it's low and it's plentiful, the cost of goods go down. Seems like people have a lot more money. Now, because states have segmented their budgets with taxes, you see a variation in what the price of gasoline is when you look at different states. For example, if you live in California, you just break out, we all have the same basic commodity price of what gasoline is, but if you take California and maybe compare it to a state like Georgia or another state, somehow they haven't seen the need to raise it that high with taxes. But crude, I follow it every day. I'm following it right now during this presentation. I do that through I think our class by itself software, the roadmap. Gold. Why not follow gold? Well, gold tells me a lot. It tells me in times of turmoil how big the turmoil is. That's a flight to quality situation with gold. It tells me in times of interest rate changes. Gold has been around for many years, has been a safety place for people to go. Gold. Bonds. What do bonds tell me? Well, they tell me the price of interest rates. Following the price of bonds tell me whether interest rates are going to fall, which is good, or rise, which is bad. And I follow the 30-year bond, done it for years. A lot of people have moved on to the 10-year, but what I look at is I look at the long-term money through the 30-year bond. And the 30-year bond gives me that take on maybe what the economy is looking like in the future and what interest rates are looking like in the future. But that's the seven sisters. Now, you asked sometimes, Tom, how are you so good at market timing? Well, not that I'm so good, it's I've got a process that allows me to reduce the noise in the market by looking at the numbers. Okay? Now, think about this. The 24-hour market. Why am I talking the 24-hour market? Well, most people are focused on the market when they're up, you know, and some people get up about 9, look at the market, and then go about their merry ways. But other people follow it a little longer than that. I don't care where you live, whether you live in Honolulu or whether you live in Europe, the 24-hour market has a time for you to trade. So you ought to learn it in case you ever travel. But you ought to learn it in case you're like I am. Sometimes I'm up in the middle of the night looking at the market because I know there's certain times in the middle of the night that are very lucrative if I happen to be up. So I know when to be in and when to be out. That's quite an advantage over 99% of the people out there that never even give a second thought to the 24-hour market. Having the 24-hour market as a way to be out and back is very important. Let me explain. Let's say that I left right now. Time right now is 11:17. I would be thinking in my head, well, I've got a reference bar starting in 13 minutes called Genesis. I better pay attention to that opening price. Or say I'm going to come back and I've got a chance to come back today and I can be back by 1:30. I got another reference bar. I work my schedule around these reference bars because they are so lucrative if you learn some simple, basic facts. I give it away. I should sell it, but I don't. I give this away. This calendar right here, this chart right here tells you the whole story about the 24-hour market. It tells you that Asia kicks off the day. It tells you that Europe comes on board about 4:30 in the morning. It tells you that you have the US morning. I call that the New York side of the market. Then you have the California side, the afternoon. It divides the world for you to take a slice of the economic pie. And this is so important for people to understand because I find it very interesting to do this. And there's certain other reference bars that come into play. We call it XYZ. X is when the pre-market starts in the morning. Y is Genesis, starts at 11:30. And Z is the closing bell, which you compare to your start of the day, taking that 2 reference bar frame to figure things out. That's the point. Breaking down the 24-hour market. Starts at 6 the night before for futures and 8 o'clock for stocks. That's very important information if you trade both. At 6 tonight, we'll start Tuesday. Now, you should know that and understand it. At 8 o'clock, we'll start Tuesday for stocks. You need to understand that. And all the news around the world comes into this 24-hour market. Now, with the DTI method, I'd recommend you get my books, The Markets Never Sleep, but with the 24-hour market, you can trade stocks tonight. I traded a couple stocks last night. Go look, just for the fun of it, at Palantir. Right this second, look at Palantir. Where's Palantir trading right this second? I haven't looked. I've been long since last night, but where's it trading? I'm going to show you the power of this in real terms. Where's Palantir trading? I would expect somebody to type it in. Palantir. Trade 141.74. But look at it last night. I bought it at 140. I'm still up $1.70. It went to 145. How many of you would like to get into a stock before everybody else knows it's going to go higher? I would. You know, you think Congress has got an advantage. We've got an advantage if you know where to look. Let's look at another one. Look at the TQQ. Throw the TQQ in there. What if last night, after RB1, you determined the market's going higher? Well, guess what, folks? What are you up? $2.50, $3? Anybody use the extra 300 bucks on 100 shares? This sets up almost every day knowing this kind of information. Pay attention to the 24-hour market. And if you get up late, it's okay. I don't harbor any grudge against people that sleep a lot more than I do, but know where you should start your day. Not when you wake up. You need to go back to 6 o'clock the previous night and follow it through to have a good understanding. Now here's an example on Schwab. If you want to place an order at night, it says good to cancel EXTO. Put that in force and they'll take your order. How many people knew that if they wanted to trade at night a stock? I'm just curious. Did y'all know that? I'm probably helping some people. Now they know. That's the importance of knowing how to use your platform. Kevin's making a lot of money taking this to the bank. As he says, it works great. Now let's go into the reference bars. Let's look at the reference bars per se. Reference bars are 30-minute increments at the start of each major time zone. There's 4 major ones, and then there's 3 auxiliary reference bars, X, Y, Z, around the clock. The first one starts, like I said, at 6 o'clock at night. And there is the reference bars and the times. If you don't know these, you ought to take a snapshot of this. I'm giving it to you and watch what happens based off these times. How many people trade options? Anybody here trade options? Well, if you're going to trade an option to the long side, you definitely want to do it around these reference bar times because that's when they're going to move. I just gave you the key that option traders for years have been trying to figure out. I just gave it to you by knowing that little one simple insight about the reference bars in general. First question you should ask yourself, how do you use all that information to position yourself for the current daily trend? So the first thing in your checklist should say, what did the market do on the reference bars up to the time I woke up and started looking at the market? Because everybody's different. So if you wake up early, you don't have as much work to do. You wake up late, you need to go back in time and look at what did the reference bars do and use that information to help you with the trend. This morning, who was in TNT this morning? Anybody in TNT this morning? I said, I might as well give everybody a scholarship. I told them to buy the TQQ about 74. The TQQ right now is at 76.23. That's 220 bucks. That's a month subscription into TNT. Hey, every day I'm analyzing, interpreting, and letting people know where to go. Okay? That's how you use this information to help you with your current daily trend. Now, I spent a lot of sleepless nights, okay? I spent a lot of sleepless nights trying to figure out what the trend was. And then it came to me about 20 years ago, I was overcomplicating it. How many people's ever heard people talk about head and shoulders, flags, formations, all that stuff? Anybody ever heard that? You know, talking about chart descriptions. Well, I learned it all. And then I came to the conclusion, all I need to know is to follow what a long looks like, what a short looks like, and what staying out looks like. If you look at that, it's pretty obvious, isn't it? The long, the low of the current bar, that green bar, is high, about midpoint high is the low, and it's made a higher high. That's a good looking long. Or a short does the same thing. Comes back, retraces about half of the previous bar, and then goes lower. And then, of course, when they're in between like that, keep the hand off the mouse. That's the beautiful thing about my way of chart reading. Everybody here ought to be able to read a chart after 2 minutes with me doing it. Now let's explore the concept of time and how two major markets open in the evening we must follow. The Nikkei opens at 8 o'clock currently, or 7 when we change back to standard time. The Hang Seng opens at 9:30 and then backs up to 8:30 when we change back. These are the two markets you follow in the evening. There's usually, you can find out what they're doing if you don't have a data feed that will give it to you. Bloomberg TV gives it to you, or investing.com. You can go find out what's happening with those markets in the evening right there. Okay? Using those two. One's a website, the other one's a TV channel. Now it starts out our new trade day, but it doesn't start in isolation. You must refer back at least to the closing bell trade the day prior. So when you come in to last night on Sunday, you look at Friday's closing bell trade. You take the low or high of that particular bar and compare it to the low or high of RB1. That is your frame to kick off your week with. That's an insight that you need to know. Now, after Sunday night, you will have the closing bell trade at 3:30 readily apparent to you as you start your 6 o'clock. Every day of the week has something to offer the trader, Monday through Friday. Now, here's some Sunday night insights for you. First, review the Seven Sisters. Write down the opening prices of the futures markets. At 8 o'clock, look at your ETR line on your roadmap and write down your stocks, what they're doing at 8. And that gets you started for the week doing that. Then you look for, is anything making a high or low over Friday? Give you an example. Palantir was making a high. MU was making a high. That's an example. Those are some insights of Sunday night. Now, another insight I tell people, probably you shouldn't trade unless you're really aggressive before 8 o'clock after you get those markets open, overseas markets open. Tools that I use inside the roadmap, it's called Roadmap Trader. And I'll look there and see whether it's telling me to be long or short on all the tickers I'm looking for. That's an insight for Sunday night. Also, I look and see, is there any news happening over the course of the week and how it might affect the current trend? Any major earnings reports I need to know? All that's done on Sunday night. Barbara, DTI provides you a planning document that I use, and the daily rundown that's posted into the TNT should give you everything that's important for that day. Other websites you can use, the NASDAQ market website. I like to have the executive summary. All right, Monday insights. I know a lot more on Monday. I know where we open the week at. I know the high and low for Monday. I know whether or not the market finished strong, neutral, or weak. I know what is trending, different sectors. And how does this fit in with what happened last week? Trends that go from one week to the next are stronger trends. That's an insight for Monday. Generally speaking, I don't do a lot of trading on Monday. As a general rule, I'm building my plan to start executing on Tuesday or Monday night. Is what I thought from last week coming in this week correct? Or do I have a different plan? If I don't know, I always win with I don't know, let the market tell me, to get that bias, that personal bias of what I think out of the way. That's the way I like to trade. Let the market tell me, trade what I see. All right, Tuesday insights. Again, any major news I need to be aware of. I now have extended the week opening to a new high, new low. I always know those numbers for any ticker I'm interested in. Is there any other ticker or sector that I need to pay attention to? Like today, I didn't have, this is an example, I didn't have nuclear as one of my sectors for today, but I'm watching nuclear stocks up there. They surge, so I got to pay attention to nuclear here on Monday. I'm adding nuclear. Okay? And see if it plays into Tuesday. That's Tuesday insights. Also, is any of the major stocks trending? Typically, it's just not one stock going up. It's the whole group of stocks going up. That's a better trend. And that's really what I look for on Tuesday. Wednesday, this is the midweek break. Here I look at my plan for the week. I review my 10 tickers that I identified as possible stocks. For example, I said I'm going to buy Palantir above 140. I did. Okay. I said if NVIDIA gets above and holds above 145 after Monday, I'm going to probably buy it. I said CoreWeave, this is where I review the tickers. I go through it, CoreWeave, I look at it, 156. It's up almost $9. Oracle was another stock that I was looking at. I said if it gets above 218, but I look at Oracle, it's down at its low. So I back away from Oracle. I look at OWN, I look at MU, AMD, QQQ. Here's a good one. I said if it gets above 535.55 on a closing basis after Monday, I'll consider it. SPY 603 and the diamond did not go down today. So I review those 10 tickers. When I give you those 10 tickers, you ought to be saying, thank you, thank you, thank you. That's after me looking at an entire database of stocks I'm interested in, and I'm telling you the 10 best. Now I've taken it one step further. In TNT, I'm going to trade options on those stocks that set up in the week. It just made the value of TNT go off the charts, me doing that. I don't have to do that. I wanted to do it to help you. That's Wednesday Insights. Thursday Insights are you still take the data from Sunday night, you integrate it together, you're keeping up now instead of a 1 day high, 1 day low, 2 day high, 2 day low. Now you've got almost a 3 day high and low to look at. Thursdays are known for being correction days. As general, you get a correction in a trend that's trending higher. You get a typically on Thursday, you get that. You always got to keep that in mind. It's a correction day. You also need to start looking at your total exposure because you remember, you're trying to do it for the week, right? And you say to yourself, maybe I can cut down some of my exposure on Thursday in the market. You only got 1 more day left. You no longer have 3 or 4 days, you got 1 day left. And then again, any news that might rock the boat. Always keep track of news that may or may not rock the boat. That's always important. Friday is pretty simple. I tend to narrow my focus on Friday. Let him catch up with me. I narrow my focus. I try to reduce all my exposure for over the weekend. If I can at a profit, I always concentrate with my weekend side hustle on Friday. Sometimes I do it on Thursday, but generally speaking, my big focus always comes to finding that one trade. You saw what we did on the weekend this week. And then I try to get myself back to a neutral position for the weekend with my trading account. Okay? That's what I do. Maybe some targeted plays here and there, but nothing big on Friday. My whole goal, I like that cash to hold on to it over the weekend. And I look at next week's news, see if any of it's playing into this week. For example, do I have any holidays? Like this week, we got the holiday on Thursday, but it really becomes important around July the 4th when we have the big holiday in the sky. Okay? That's Friday. And then I do my wrap up at 3. And I say, folks, who would have believed that we made 22 winning trades in June so far? I hope y'all made some money. We do that at 3. That's where I take a victory lap. Hopefully. I say hopefully, you never know because nothing's, that sure. But that's how I look at each trade day. Follow the process of the DTI method. Time of day is important. Key numbers are important, and DTI reference.
Tom, we've been going solid for 40 minutes. You want to take a break till, I don't know, 15, 20-minute break?
Yeah, I think we ought to take a break. Yeah, I think taking a break would be good, but now you got enough thing to put together what I've been trying to get put together, I hope. So when we come back, what are we going to talk about, Jonathan?
Identifying trends for the week.
Oh, okay. We're going to get a little bit longer term. I like that.
So
give me some feedback, folks, if you like what I did today. I want to hear from you. This is something that I'm doing to try to make you better traders. Okay. And this is the time to do it. Okay. We'll be back 20 minutes. I like it, Jonathan. All right, folks, how to identify trends for the week? Well, to trade the weekly trend, you got to know where we open the month at. And so I think that the monthly open is so key no matter what you do. If you don't take anything else away from what I say today, remember, don't be long stocks that are below their monthly open. Don't be long or short stocks that are above the monthly open, no matter what anybody says. That's your measurement to determine for that month. Now, we have a little secret here that I share with our subscribers. It's called the 3-day high, 3-day low. You will find that the 3-day high and 3-day low will typically, and I say typically, that means 4 out of 5 times, keep you on the right side of the monthly trend. For example, I always know where the 3-day high for the E-mini is and the 3-day low. That sort of keeps me in perspective as I leave that monthly open. Then, of course, we've already talked about how important Monday's high and Monday's low is. For example, if we're above the monthly open, just think of it this way. Above the monthly open, we're above the 3-day high. In the case of the S&P, we are. And then we asked ourselves, after today, are we above the week start high? We don't know what the week start high is. Right now it's 6102, but if we're higher than that going into tomorrow. Now, when does tomorrow start? Not tomorrow. When does tomorrow start? You got to know this. It starts tonight at 6 o'clock. That's when tomorrow starts, tonight at 6 for the futures. And then, of course, for stocks, it starts at 8. Now, we can use the trade tracker inside the roadmap under the tables drop down. Jonathan, explain how to use this or how to get it.
Yeah, it's under tables. There's a drop down in the roadmap called tables, and underneath there, it's all alphabetical order. You'll find one labeled trade tracker. This is what it looks like once it's built. It gives us that month open, that first 3 days, high and low number, and the week start, high and low number.
Now, notice for September, it's different than it was for June. And so in September, we're showing the 3-day high is at 59.99, which basically is where we opened last night at, the 6,000. Notice that week start low? That was the opening of last night. That was your first clue that we're going higher. Okay? And that's a very key thing to note, where you are based on the 3-day high, 3-day low. And you go through any of the tickers. Let's say that you're really bullish on Berkshire. I'm real bullish on Berkshire, I have it in my retirement account, yada, yada, yada. But let's look at it for this month. This month, Berkshire opened at 501. The 3-day low is 490. We're at the low end of Berkshire there at 490. The week start low was 488. So if Berkshire took out 488, you would see some more what I would call correction of Berkshire this month. You can use it for both going up or going down. Now let's go over to Palantir. Palantir 3-day high was 135. Well, we opened this morning higher than that. And then, of course, we took off, and now we got a week start high of 144, which is the next point after 145. You'd think about getting some more Palantir. Anyway, these are the kind of things this tool will help you do. It'll help you with gold. It'll help you with any market you're trading. Any questions about how to read the trade tracker? The only exception, if you've got a major trend in the year that's so powerful because markets just don't go straight down or straight up that you're willing to take the risk. There's certain markets that set up that way. Those are exceptions to the general rule. FTD, the first 3 days, Stacy, first 3 days, that algo. Now, what I'm looking for as early as Monday night and Tuesday morning is direction that I can trade. So far, the direction Monday has been up, right? It's been up. Reference bar 1 was up, reference bar 2 was up. It's been up. And this is where you got to look for a corrective move, maybe. And the earliest when you have a trend like today that you can look for a corrective move, I think, is Genesis. That happens between 11:30 and 12. And Genesis, okay, is almost to turn negative, which means we're going to correct some of the up move. And you can follow along with the reference bars. Now, what I do on an up day like this, I look at the low end of Genesis, but I also look at the high end of Genesis, because the high end tells me above 6102, we turn back positive. It's actually 6105. That's a little bit more advanced, but we get above 6105, then I might be buying something. But right now, hands in pocket, money in pocket, I'm waiting for my next opportunity. That's the beauty of Genesis. Every day, you got that. Now remember, everything and anything you do starts with the Seven Sisters. The difference is when you're looking at the Seven Sisters, now you're looking at dailies, highs and lows. See what we've done? We've expanded it out from using the reference bars to daily. So we'll still go to the reference bars. That's also very important, but we're looking at dailies here to see, is the trend making new highs, making new lows, okay? So if you look at today's action over Friday, for example, the low on Friday is a lot lower than that 6,000. So far we've got a lower low. So then you got to ask yourself, how high did Friday go? And Jonathan, how high was Friday's high, since we're switching back to September here? How high did Friday's S&P go? I know we're higher than the low, but how high did it go on Friday using the September?
Using September, Friday's high looks like 6,029. It's right here. Friday's high, 6,029 on the September.
So today, I want you to think about this mentally. Make that a daily. Is that a live market, or
this is a live
make
market?
It a daily?
Yep.
Okay, if you make it a daily, it gives you a picture there. Notice that we made, look at the last 2 bars. Remember I told you we came down about halfway to the previous bar, and now we're up here at 6108 high. That to me is a bullish setup. And so today's low becomes the new number that would concern me if we got below
6,000.
6,000. And that comes back into the high of the 3-day algo where support is. Does everybody see how all this fits together? There's the number right there. Now, let me tell you, the E-mini and the NASDAQ, if they're trading together, they're both making highs, doing the same thing, you got a pretty good trend. Now, If I think the market's going higher, why? Here's a question you ought to ask yourself: why aren't I just loading the boat right now? I don't have to. I can wait until I get to the end of Monday and take out the daily high tonight or tomorrow and have a lot higher percentage trade than if I think we're going to do it. Then the other thing you have to identify is key news. This week we have the Fed meeting on Wednesday, June 18th, prior to that holiday. My guess, okay, he's got that on Central Time, it'd be on Eastern Time at an hour. But my guess would be the market's going to gain some more strength into that Fed meeting. They love to let Powell screw up the trend. So he'll have his opportunity come Tuesday or Wednesday. You got to love what I'm showing you. Knowing everything I've told you today will make you a better trader. You ought to review these tapes. You ought to ask yourself, what is the reference bar? What are the times the reference bar is important? You ought to write it out on your notebook, okay? And that's the way you learn, by repetition, okay? Now, if the market got above 61.05, I'd probably go buy something. Just say it. Or I'll wait it out. Mondays is a day of observation. We banged out, our 20th trade with that weekend side hustle, and we banged out another trade. John, who had that trade on the TQQ? I forget who had it. What room had it?
TNT had that.
TNT, the one that we charged $200 for a month?
That's the one.
Anybody can't be a member of that. I just don't get it. Yeah, you'll just have to change it on Tasty. They're a little bit slow, but today's rollover day. There's May trading, 44 winners, 3 losers. I want everybody to know this because this will keep you, doesn't mean every trade's going to be a winner, but man, oh man, who wants to bet against this? If you're betting against what we're doing, it's like playing Russian roulette with your money. Look at that, 21 winners, 100% accuracy, okay? 100% accuracy. Jonathan, is that part 4, how do I find tickets? Let's take a break here. It's 12:15. Let's take a break if we can for about 15, 20 minutes. Let's have a walk around break because right now the market's going sideways and this lets things digest into the customer base where they'll know what to look for and how to look for it.
Okay, 20 minutes.
Carol just said she made $1,840 off my TQQ trade this morning. Even people in California, members of TNT, can make money. Look at Carol go. I posted about 8:10, 8:15 this morning.
Okay, Tom, back for some more train and trading. Tom, we'll sit down here in just a minute or two and we'll get going again.
All right. You want to get rid of the timer there, Jonathan?
Yeah, just to top the hour in 25 minutes as a 20-year bond option, by the way. Not much news today, but that 20-year bond auction is probably the only thing they're looking at today.
Jonathan, somebody had some questions about the weekend profit club.
Let's see what the question was. We got in at 10. Let's see, where did we get in at? Will, we got in on Friday at 104. We said take profit between 124 and 134. I sent a message out this morning when it was trading in that range, took profit at 128. Somebody held it and took profit in the 150 plus range. So, Will, I'm not sure if you were just away from your computer or whatnot this morning, but that's what happened.
That's how it is, Will. You got to figure out what you did versus everybody else. There'll be another one next week. Thanks for answering that, Jonathan. That made me feel good with your answer.
No
Bruce
problem.
took profit at 124 and 134. All right. How do I find the 10 tickers? All right. It starts out with me going here. This is a list of stocks that I start out every month with, and sometimes they change, but this is where my focus goes with what I'm trying to do. So let's just do that, I guess, right, Jonathan? We're going to look at the 10 to 25.
Yeah.
All right. So notice Jonathan does this for us to make it simple. He goes through every ticker and he writes out there above the high, or he'd say below the low. But look at what we've got there. We've got a bunch of choices. Okay. If you look at that, look at Disney. That's one stock I brought on new this month. I haven't traded it yet, but it's up at 120. Maybe I got to look closer there. But I had enough with my, with what I'd chosen. But if you look at this, it sort of gives you an idea of what stocks are moving and how they're moving. Very simple, but we do this first of every month. Now, Jonathan, do we limit this to certain subscribers or we give this to everybody? I'm just curious.
Well, it depends. This was initially for the Sawgrass folks.
Oh, okay. We did it for Sawgrass this year. Okay.
Yeah, and then later on you said, let's just go ahead and share it for everybody.
Yeah, I think we showed it a couple of times to different people. So there you go.
And I see why Will asked the question on the, I had a typo on the snapshot I sent on earlier. So I'm going to resend it.
Look, all I can do is make the trades, Will. I can't do the typing stuff, okay?
There we go. In case anybody scratching their head about the math like Will was earlier. There's the typo fix. In at 104, out at 128.
I'd like you to put down at 150, but we can't.
Right.
Anyway. Anyway, this is something I do at the start of every month. Now, I will add stocks to this as the month develops. I'll see different stocks that I want to have in there, And we got a total, I think, about 30 right now, don't we, Jonathan, in here? I think we've added 4 or 5.
It goes down the road 24 or 34, excuse me.
Yeah, 34 stocks so far. Now, do we have, Jonathan, I'm curious, I'm getting a lot of questions about terminology we use. Do we have anything that explains the terminology we use that we can just give people?
Well, yeah, let's see if I go to one-click trading and we just pick a program. Let's choose TNT. And if you go to scroll down to DTI's resources sheet, this is located on every single one of our, members portals, if you will. On the master resource sheet, scroll to page 2, there's a DTI important terms to know. And if I click on that, let's see if we have FTD on here. I thought we did, but might need to add it. It looks like we might need to add that. But these are great terms to know, abbreviations and whatnot. And I'll spend some time today adding the FTD and the week start and what those little short snippet of what those mean and why they're important. Let me show you that again. You go to any of your programs.
That's pretty cool.
So for instance, I'll go to Afterburner here, scroll to the bottom, and the website's team making a liar out of me. I'll get the resources added to Afterburners. Let's go to 25 Cent Trader, scroll to the bottom, go to DTI's resources sheet, scroll to the second page of this resources sheet, DTI important terms to know. You can just click on the click here button and it pops open that Google document you can read through. Making notes right now to add the FTD and week start and to get that little section of resources added to Afterburners.
Good job. And we're constantly adding things that you'll find. So it's good to review it every now and then. Okay. All right, Jonathan.
Go back to that, those numbers.
Does everybody see the structure I have it laid out? This is something I do every month. I do it this way because, I try to organize how to make money. I mean, I think what we do with the years of experiences we've had working with students, a lot of ideas come from students where we go, that's a good idea. We incorporate it. I've always been open-minded if somebody's got a better idea. But you'll see when you're a DTI, constant student, you will see that we're constantly trying to improve because this is a tough game. And I start out thinking, how can we make money this week? How can I make money today? And then it gets even narrower. Can I make any money during this time today that I'm looking at the market? Those are the kind of questions I ask myself. Well, that's a good suggestion, Jim. The problem is, here's the problem. I'm going to favor, as Jesse Livermore did, the path of least resistance. And the path of least resistance, for me, is stocks that I can make money with. And if the market's going down, that's a whole different story. But we've been, been climbing higher, I guess is a good way of saying it. but it probably wouldn't hurt to have it anyway. That's just my thoughts. And you're such a great student. I'm definitely going to understand your proposal there. So the question you ought to ask yourself, let's say, look at gold, GLD. Month open 309, high 311. Current price for gold right now is 313. Could I buy gold? Yeah, you could buy gold, but I would look at a reference bar and see how gold's looking before I bought it. That's the difference. I'd take it to the reference bar. Bruce asked the question, with the market in an uptrend, when would you buy insurance or pocket puts? Well, I'd have to have some sign that some event was going to occur that would have the power to take us down, or the market itself, I'd have to see a rise in the VX, okay? And, different things like that. So, the VX is the volatility index, and that's an idea. Yeah, I'll go, Barbara, I'll do that in a little bit. I'll go live. I want to get through the presentation, though. All right, let's go back. And then I identified trends. Clearly right now, you've got some big moves in NVIDIA, MU, AMD, Palantir, CoreWeave. You got some big moves there that set up very nicely. And so you go there. Now, again, I'll add tickers that come across my desk that give me something to look at that may say it might be a trade there. Okay. And I get those. I do a lot of staying in tune with the pre-market and things like that. Now here's the 10 tickers. If you look at them, Palantir 140, been to 145 now. NVIDIA is 145.55, right on the bubble. CoreWeave above 147. Now CoreWeave is at 155. That's a pretty good start to the week. Oracle 218 correcting. AMD, look at AMD, 118.55. It's at I think last I checked, 127. I bought it last night, and then I bought some more of it. Where's it at right now, John? Just off the top of your head, AMD. Oh, 127.62. So
yeah, I just updated this slide for the current numbers.
Yeah, okay. 10 tickers for the week. AMD. That stock could get to 230 if we really have a super bull after July. Okay. Let's take a break. When I come back, we're going to talk about futures first and crude oil. Jonathan, why don't we take, does anybody have any other questions that we can handle? Maybe take about a 15-minute break here, and we'll come back and get into crude oil and futures first. Now, does anybody here want to make a lot of money? I mean, a lot of money this year? Tell me yes, you do. Well, you're going to have to be with me tonight. That's the bottom line. Because I've been waiting all year for this trade. I've been telling people, if they've been in my futures first, that I'm going to set it up. And I'm starting to make a move. And I would say if you got any inclination tonight, you got to, it's a chicken, fish, or steak moment. Okay. So we'll be back in 14 minutes. Barbara, why don't you send an email to Jonathan and let him maybe have a session with you to help you out? Row at DTI Trader. All right, we'll be back in 13 minutes. All right, folks. Anybody ever? Oh, I'm early. I thought it was over. I'll come back in a minute. All right, now the time's up. Now, one of the questions that you ask yourself, clearly you got an uptrend day, okay? And you're sitting there and you might have not made any money and you're sort of saying, I want to make some money, or you already made money and you're saying they're going to make more. That's that greed, right? So what you do is you say to yourself, what can I do and how's the easiest way I can make a trade? Well, it all comes down to where we are in the daily cycle. So before we get started with futures first, Jonathan, I'm going to put a live market up there and look at the E-mini and let people see a couple things about it, okay? And then I'll get into futures first and crude oil. So if I put the E-mini up there and I look at the top in the, what was it, high, 6108, 6108, well, we pulled back about 18 points. It's really not that much. And then you look at the frame. Does everybody see the high of the frame and the low of the frame? Everybody see that? Things that I look for during this tight period is, well, where's the midpoint of the frame? And to do that, you got to add those two numbers and divide it by 2. Jonathan, what is it? 61, what is it? Let's just do that for.
Frame high is 6102. Frame high is 6066. Divide those two, or add and then divide by 2. 6084 is the midpoint.
Yeah, so basically all that does is a ballpark way to see, hey, have we seen the highs, or is it going to stop there in a few more points and turn back up? Well, again, it goes to basic chart reading. You never anticipate, but look at that chart right there. If you look at the current bar and you look at the preceding bar, it's basically saying it's in the lower end of that bar. And so the correction is coming down a little bit, and you'll probably see the 84 area based on that. Now, what would tell you, here's other questions you ought to ask. What would tell you maybe it's not going to go that far? You know what would tell you? Being able to tell time. And what I mean by that is, you ask yourself, what time's the next reference bar? I want everybody here to answer. What time's the next reference bar? (1:30 to 2 Eastern time. And so when we get that bar at 1:30 to 2, what happens if we go out the higher end of that bar? Well, then you get a challenge of the previous bar, and it's identified by the frame, which is 61. What is it? High of that Genesis bar, 6192, right?
6102.
Yeah, 6102. That's what I thought. Okay. So then it challenges that. And there's where we find out, did we really get a turn or did we have a partial turn and it turned back down? The beauty of my chart reading approach, you always know. Like right now, I'm not going long. And why? Because I have a lower low and a lower high. Even though it's bullish, I'm not taking my old hand and buying anything right now, even though the trend overall is bullish. And what makes me say it's bullish, go to the daily chart. Whole different picture there, isn't it? And I'm a long way from that low of the day of that daily move. So anyway, I want to show that before I get into futures first. All right, before we go, let's put crude oil up there where we look at a live market to put things in perspective. Go with the daily on crude oil. The high was 77.62. Is that on Friday, Jonathan? The high? I'm trying to.
Yeah, that was Friday. Today's high was about 77.5, just shy of that.
So we went 77.5 day. We failed to make a new high, right?
Right.
Okay, and we had a low today of what?
Right around 70 or 69.40.
69.40?
Yes.
Okay, 69.40. Okay. Now, Pete asked, what point would I have taken some profit? I would have taken profit during the rally stage of the market because my long weekend side hustle and my TQQ long paid me big. And so I would have taken profit into that stream because I know one thing. Write this down. The market, 4 out of 5 days, makes a high or makes a low around Genesis time frame. So what does that mean? What that means is if I got a rally going on that I'm making a bunch of money on, I'm going to take some off the table. I'm not playing against that 4 out of 5 odds that might be the high. Everybody understand that thinking? And you got the time way before you get there, 11:30 to 12 to 1. Sometimes it extends, but that time there. So from a time standpoint, the market was due to top out around that time. Now, topping out can be minor or it can be major. But generally speaking, most days you get a higher low around this time of day. That is so valuable to you. Man, if somebody would have told me that, 20 years ago, I had to figure it out myself through the School of Hard Knocks. And I'm sharing it with you right now. Because you didn't have to pay to be here. You just had to take action on your own behalf and show up. That's the beauty of it. All right, let's go to the slides. Let's go to futures first. I made my points. Think about what I made and think about that every day. Is the market trending lower into that time period, looking for a low, or is it trending higher, looking for a high? Everybody understand that concept? I gave you the time. You don't have to worry. 4 out of 5 times it will hit a time. But I will say this, if you do get a continuation day, meaning it doesn't make a high, they're big days. All you have to do is go look at those on the books. All right, futures first and crude oil. People know me, know that I believe in futures. Crude is more than just gasoline. It's more than energy. The products defined in the crude include plastics, paint, cosmetics, and really just about anything you can imagine. Its energy provision may be the driving force of the commodity, but the versatility of crude oil explains its true value. Very valuable to know about the price of crude. It affects so many things. Now let's look at a price history of crude oil so far in 2025. In January, we opened at 71.85 in January. February went up to 74. We broke February and closed negative in the quarter, 69.95. We came back up at the first of the quarter, tested the yearly open, and then down we went. April, May down to 58 opening, and now we've climbed back up on this war footing and went up to about 77. I think that was 77 and a half, what you said, right? So we've had outside influences on the price of crude, which sets up an opportunity for the few and the brave. There's ways to play that. And those few and the brave will do well to listen to me because I've been waiting on this all year long. Now, who are the few and who are the brave? Who's interested in really being part of what we're about to do? Okay, because it's not going to be a one-day trade. It's not going to be a two-day trade. It's going to be $300 will be the max. I will try to start off with $100. Okay. I believe the current rally in crude creates that opportunity I've been waiting on all year. I'll explain that tonight, the opportunity being what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it. But let's talk about crude itself in Futures First. In Futures First Education, I cover a wide group of different opportunities. I built my career trading futures. It was my bread and butter. I still trade it every day. Today, I've traded futures. Not many days that go without me trading futures. Had a brokerage firm back in the day. I founded DTI to teach other traders. I found out in the brokers, people with open accounts, needed education. That's what brought about DTI and me to teach other traders how to do it. Wearing too many hats, I closed the brokerage firm, stepped away from futures. I considered myself retired. I had a membership to the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, largest exchange in the world. I was fortunate enough to have a Globex terminal way before electronic trading started. And then about 2 years ago, a doctor came to one of my classes and basically said, Tom, I've done everything, but I find my work gets in the way. I'd really like to learn futures. And I told him at that class, if he got 9 other people, I'd come out of retirement and teach. At the time, I thought it was a one-off, but word spread. He said he'd heard stories of me helping others do well in futures. Got a lot of them here today, right here in this room. I figured I could teach things about futures you can't get out of a textbook. I can educate you in such a way that you won't have to spend the thousands and thousands of dollars that I spent learning this stuff. So the futures class was scheduled. We had to build a curriculum. And for the past 12 to 18 months, I've been teaching futures. And then I fell into a sweet spot. I wanted to give you something that would be current and ongoing without taking a lot of time. And so far, I've built classes around all the 7 systems and all the techniques, all the way through everything you possibly think that's involved in futures I've covered. I still have other things I'll cover. I ventured into currencies last week or this month or last month, and I have videos to remind me. So the way it works is, has anybody ever spun a wheel and say, you hope your lucky number comes up? You know, you spin it and you hope it lands on you, sort of like that television show with Vanna White. You know, you spin that wheel. Well, every Monday, since I've got the foundation in place, I've been spinning that wheel. I spin it from Sunday night to Monday. And at 7 o'clock, we meet online and I will teach one or a multiple approach to what's happening in the market. Futures first, because I believe everybody here ought to learn it, even if they don't trade it. And you will find out futures are very handy in market shocks. Trading on Monday night goes deep. And I usually at 8 to 9 will take the example of that week and show application education, how to do it and what to look for, go through the platforms. It's really about teaching you how such a valuable thing it is that we do. You can go to dtitrader.com/futures, or if you got any questions about joining us tonight, you can call 904-706-3532. I think we have 3 levels of membership right now. Is that right, Jonathan? Short term and medium and long term. And then we have classes. You ought to post to classes where they can see when we have classes. But if you think about it, I think people will tell you, if you have any inclination of being successful in the market, you got to understand futures, because you can't trade options, you can't trade stocks like we did unless you integrate futures into your thinking. You're not looking at charts, you're not looking at some pattern on a chart. You're looking at the futures market to give you a fluid view of when to get in, timing, and when to get out. Now, once you join, you will get an email. That email will give you a link to Futures First Telegram channel. And again, we got classes. If you want to come in person, if you're new, you sign up for a class. We give you a year inside our online version of futures. So sign up for a class, and then you get waived the fee of buying a year. And Jonathan, you gonna post the class dates where they can see them?
Talking about the in-person classes?
Yeah, in person. They need to see the in person. It ought to be part of this presentation, because they sell out and then people go, man, I want to come. And then it end up creating a new date, a new class. But we got classes in the future set up, and let's just go through it where everybody can see when they are. Okay, the July 14th and 15th class coming right around the corner. It's sold out. You can't come to that one. But you can come to August 4th and 5th if you sign up. And again, if you sign up, that will include 1 year in the online futures. Got one September the 22nd and 23rd, October 6th and 7th. Got 2 seats left there. Advanced class October 13th and 14th. And then a futures class to finish out the year on December 8th and 9th. I added these due to demand, because people that come in person will do a lot better than taking it online, even though people take it online and get their money. It's just that coming in person is so important, because we trade, not only do we trade futures while we're there, we're not going to sit there and waste your time or mine if there's an opportunity in the market. I've traded a lot of different trades with my futures people because we're waiting for the future to set up that we're talking about or whatever. So it's really, let's make some money together in that small class. Any questions about it? That's a pretty good deal considering that I don't do it every month. I don't do it every day, but you already get signed up for a class. Or if you're already in futures first and you say, hey, maybe I need to go down there and get a class, and what we'll do is look at what you bought in futures and credit, okay? That's what we'll do. The advanced class poly will probably turn into a futures class. It's there in case people want to do some advanced trading. If I get a lot of people sign up for it, I'll probably do it. I put it on there just to give people an opportunity. Some people like to come in and have a refresher on portfolios, that kind of stuff. Do that on the advanced class. The other thing that's not on here, and you have to talk to Kelly Barber or Andraka, I do one-on-ones also, okay? All right, so the futures class tonight, we've been waiting. I've told everybody in January this would be the trade of the year. And I will start tonight with that. And then I don't mess around. I'm not going to waste your time. I've been waiting on this all year long. The setup is in place now. Okay. Yeah, we record, Stacy, we record everything we do. And that's the way it is. I'll be using options on the trade tonight, folks. Just to let you know, I'll be using options. So you got to ask yourself, can you take the expertise I have in this field and use it to your benefit? Let me ask some of the people in the futures to give me a couple of things I can tell you said about how good it is, because I probably haven't done it justice, to be honest. Stacy, John, how do you get the, you posted in a room, right? The Futures First room?
Right. It all happens inside the Telegram channel. So you got to join that. Once you get involved, you got to get into the Telegram channel.
That's simple and straightforward. Don't have to go sign in anywhere once you have membership. Any questions? Carol said, look at what she's done. Somebody didn't understand how to spell the word stocks when we first met. She not only knows how to spell it, she is a heck of a trader she's become with the training she's taken. And her account shows it. Thank you, Carol, for saying that. All right, so we've been teaching all morning long. Let's go look at the tools that we have and go through the 7 sisters as we enter RB4. We'll come back in 7 minutes and do that, okay? If you join, let me know in here where I can call you out and give you recognition as a new person coming into futures or taking one of the classes.
Okay, Tom, we're getting into RB4.
Yeah, RB4, the open price for RB4 was
60.98.
60.98, currently 60.97. Trying to get up. We'll see if it's got enough strength to take us higher. I think the NASDAQ needs to get above 2205 to break the high of Genesis, doesn't it? Is that the number you got for the NASDAQ?
Let's see
TQQ
here.
7509.
22. Actually, the NASDAQ went above it. It went to 2207 as this reference bar opened. And then has
Right, but I'm saying it's got to get above that range there to break out.
right.
Okay, I just want to show that. All right, let's go to the Seven Sisters real quick. Let's just assess it, see what it's telling us. Bring up the E-mini. Let's just look at the E-mini. If you look at the E-mini, you look at the current bar on the E-mini, a higher high. And so far, we're above the midpoint and about mid-range of the frame on the E-mini. Let's look at the NASDAQ. The NASDAQ, if you look at the NASDAQ, you'll see it's at the top end of the range. And I think if it takes out, we said 2207 area, it's going to challenge the high. It takes that out, we go to 22. Let me give you the number. 22067 will be the next resistance point. Okay? If we take that out, look at the Dow. What's the Dow doing? Okay, the Dow is, everything's lingering either at mid level or close to the top of its frame. Crude oil. All right, crude oil is still below RB1 or RB3. Showing that high on RB3 and giving that number. That'll become important later on today when we get to the night trade. What number is that? I'm going to write it down.
72.45.
Okay, 72.45. That number there, we'll write that number down. That'd be important to the night. Okay? Perfect. 72.45. All right, let's go to gold. What is gold? I hadn't even looked at it. Gold's a little bearish. When I say that, the current bar is less than the preceding bars. Everybody see that? Circle that and let them see why I said it was bearish. It's also at the low end of the frame. Everybody see the frame? We're at the low end on gold. Right there. Right here during RB4. It'd have to break 3401 to really turn south, but that's how the current status of gold is. Okay, look at silver. Silver's at the low end of the range. It's at the top end of, it's like RB3, above the midpoint. Silver's a little bit stronger than gold, like it has from last night to today. Okay, let's look at bonds. And looked at bonds all day. Bonds are a little negative. They're below. Notice now, here's what bonds are telling me. Look at number one, first instance, current bar versus the preceding bar, you're negative. Then look over at RB3. Look at Genesis. We're below both RB3 and Genesis. So I'd go back to RB1, which is, what's the low of RB1, Jonathan?
This is RB2 right here.
And that's the one. What's the low of RB2 then?
112.29, which we just hit.
Yeah, we're just right there. Okay. Bonds are rolling over. Okay. With a lower down at 1222. Now looking at Seven Sisters, it just basically tells me we're at the crossroads right here on RB4. So let's go look at some stocks that have really excelled. Let's look at AMD first on a chart. Now, AMD got up to 2802, didn't it? It's at 2753 right now. That's hanging pretty close to the high of the frame. It's bullish. We get some buying in the main index. I think you're going to see it go higher. That's AMD. All right, bring up NVIDIA. It's at that key number, NVIDIA. If you look at NVIDIA, it's in the lower half of the RB range, still bullish, but at the lower half, and the current bar is below its preceding bar. Okay, NVIDIA. All right, let's look at MU. All right, MU is neutral. If you look at it, basically the current bar staying out. Let's look at Palantir. Palantir looks like it's going to mount a challenge towards its high of the day. See how it's at the top of its frame? Again, out of the stocks I just checked, I would look at Palantir and AMD if this thing got above those index highs. That's how you use futures in conjunction with stocks that you might trade. All right, let's look at the QQQ. Again, at the top end, waiting for a breakout. What's that number? 2536? 3536?
Yeah, 35, 36. Yep.
Well, folks, time-wise, we're midway through RB4. Hanging in here pretty tight. Would I trade right now? No. All right, let's go to futures first. We got 3 levels of membership. And as a reminder, today after the close, we'll post the newsletter. If you're not part of the newsletter, be sure you become part of that. Good information. Each week, it delivers the breakdown of this week right to your inbox with special opportunities. David is listing. He made 429 on AMD and 117 on Palantir by listing this morning. So we know what we're looking for. Will the market get strong enough to go higher to last after RB4? Hey, we just have to wait to see. All right. Thank you for this Monday's Train and Trade. I'll see everybody tonight, Futures First at 7. Today's Monday. We got some good numbers. It's going to be a great week. Any last minute questions for us as we wrap up today? Thanks for the nice things everybody did. If you didn't get a chance to post anything, like to send it to us. Send it to TG at DTI Trader. Thanks, Jonathan. I want to know how to find a replay.
Yeah, today's replay is available very quickly after we're done at the YouTube channel. Go to dtitrader.com/YouTube and then click on the live tab, LIVE tab from the YouTube channel, dtitrader.com/YouTube.
And Jonathan, they're asking how to get the spreadsheet.
Yeah, I'll post the slides again. It's on the slides. Hang on just a second. There you go, Bob. Thanks, Tom. Enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it too. It's fun to do this. See everybody on the flip side. 7 o'clock's the flip side tonight. Yeah, we're going to take the short-term level off, Jonathan. So we'll honor it for right now, but we are going to take that off. There'll be 2 levels of membership in Futures First.
Okay, Tom, heard you.